several months on the topic of digital equity. Today's workshop will focus on how we can collaborate to advance digital equity through the student support roles on which the NPSS is focused. And these again are tutoring, mentoring, student success coaching, post-secondary transition coaching, and wraparound or integrated student support coordination. My name is Kate Cochran. I'm the Managing Director of the National Partnership for Student Success, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I'm grateful to this group of leaders in our working group and everyone who's joined us today for your willingness to spend the afternoon with us and share your experience and insight. We're really looking forward to learning from you all and crafting a strategy that will help us build upon our shared strengths to deepen impact for students and families around the country. The goals of our time together are first to discuss how the NPSS supporting champions, who are generally nonprofit youth-serving organizations, as well as associations that represent key stakeholders, including superintendents, principals, parents, colleges and universities, youth development organizations, and others, thinking about how these champion organizations can support communities in advancing digital equity through their existing work. Second, highlight examples of innovation where this work is already happening. Third, determine resources and strategies necessary to further scale these types of efforts. During today's webinar, you'll hear some brief framing from me, followed by a panel discussion including representatives from AmeriCorps, the Federal Communications Commission, and the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, as well as some spotlights on promising practices from the field shared by Communities in Schools Nevada and Bite Back, a Washington, D.C. based organization that's working to close the digital divide. We're hoping that the ideas and perspectives shared during these spotlights and our panel provide insight and grounding for breakout sessions, and we're looking forward to hearing your ideas about how we can continue to collaborate to move this work forward. In the spirit of collaboration and open dialogue, I do want to point out that what is said here today stays here, but what is learned here can and should leave here. I want to emphasize that this is an off-the-record meeting, and we ask that participants not directly quote or attribute anything that folks have shared. You'll notice that we're recording now. We'll turn that recording off during the breakout room conversations. And the slides from today will be shared with everyone who've registered via email after today's session. So a bit of our framing. To provide some background information on the National Partnership for Student Success, we're a public-private partnership between AmeriCorps, the U.S. Department of Education, and the Everyone Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins University, where I'm based, working alongside a coalition of now more than 135 supporting champion organizations to meet a big goal of getting an additional 250,000 people into high impact roles supporting P-12 students by the summer of 2025. Evidence indicates that in order to recover from the impacts of the pandemic and thrive, young people can benefit from whole child interventions that provide academic support, along with support for students' social, emotional, well-being, and mental health needs, as well as create stronger connection between young people in school and young people in community. We at the NPSS are particularly focused on 5 types of people-powered and relationship-based student supports that include tutoring, mentoring, student success coaching, post-secondary transition coaching, and wraparound or integrated student supports, which you see on my screen. Each of these roles has pretty robust research behind it, indicating that if done well, it can result in a range of positive impacts for young people. We know that there's a really unique opportunity right now. There really is unprecedented need among young people, while at the same time, unprecedented opportunity presented by investments around the American Rescue Plan for schools, districts, states, and communities to really invest in getting these types of support set up and partnerships set up. We know that partnerships between schools and districts and others in their community or providers of these types of supports are often really crucial to making this work. The pandemic certainly illuminated the longstanding educational equity gaps and broadly demonstrated just how necessary digital access is in order for everyone to participate in our economy and our society. and in our education system. Expanding access and opportunity in this way requires deep and broad collaboration. The National Partnership for Student Success's group of about 135 cross-sector, multi-sector champions, many of whom I know are here with us today, all can come together to support students and communities in this way, increasing the number of caring adults or near peers, serving as tutors, mentors, success coaches, in our other NPSS aligned roles, and working to ensure that more students have increased access to the support they need gives us more avenues to advance digital equity. Today, we really hope to take the first step by discussing how we might leverage these roles and the unique opportunity presented by the Biden-Harris administration's call to action to do just that. With that, I'm really excited to turn it over to Jisoo Song of the Office of Education Technology at the U.S. Department of Education, who'll be moderating our panel and introducing our panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Like she introduced, my name is Jisoo Song, serving as a digital equity advisor for the Office of EdTech at the U.S. Department of Education. I've met many of you in the audience already, but to briefly introduce myself, my role is to collaborate with agencies across the federal government to help maximize the reach of programs and policies around broadband access and digital equity that impact our learners. So I'm really grateful to have been a part of this working group that organized this virtual workshop today. And we look forward to hearing all of your insights in a moment when we go into breakouts. But I'm also excited to, lead the next portion of the agenda, where we'll have a chance to hear from my colleagues across the federal government. They'll do a little bit of vision setting for us, letting us know why this right now is the moment to be talking about digital equity and building support for learners, led by initiatives like the National Partnership for Student Success. For the sake of time, I'll quickly introduce our panelists and go right into the questions. We have knowledge-build digital equity advisor for the National Telecommunications and Information Administration under the Department of Commerce. I'm always grateful for NTI's partnership and leadership on digital equity and collaboration with Ed on this topic. We have Alejandro, Consumer and Government Affairs Bureau Chief at the FCC. He and I have been on a few digital equity events together over the past year. And Tara, who is the Expanded Learning Partnerships Fellow and P12 Education Advisor at AmeriCorps. I know I've only recently met you, but folks have told me you bring a lot of expertise and experience into this space. So I'm appreciative of you being here with us this afternoon. So just diving right into the questions, my first question is for you, Alejandro. Why do you think there's this focus on digital equity nationally at the moment? And what is your agency, what's the FCC doing to build on this momentum and support learners by partnering with different communities?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having us. This is a great panel, and I think a great convening. I think for me personally and for the FCC, digital equity means that everyone, regardless of their zip code or economic standing, is able to connect and participate and thrive in today's modern society. So for us, I think expanding digital opportunity and promoting digital equity is not just an important area of focus for me personally or for Chairwoman Rosenworcel, but it really is an agency-wide priority. And part of what that means in practice is that we are actively working to ensure that we have accurate maps with granular level data so that we know exactly where broadband is and where it isn't, that we are working to close the broadband affordability gap through the Affordable Connectivity Program, and that we are bringing new levels of transparency into the broadband pricing through our new broadband nutrition labels. And those new labels that you'll be seeing kind of hit the streets probably early next year will help consumers compare service options and make informed decisions that can help us select an internet service plan that both meets our household needs and our long-term budget. And we're also really working hard to ensure that we are establishing rules and model policies to prevent digital discrimination. And I think core to kind of my function and my bureau at the FCC is to ensure that we also have an inclusive and accessible consumer engagement process so that we can promote policies that bridge digital disparities and extend our country's telecommunication services to everyone, everywhere. I think if I would just kind of leave our group with kind of one sentiment is that what is clear before today more than ever before is that bridging our country's digital opportunity divide is a team lift. It has taken focused leadership in Congress, across the federal government, within the public and private sectors, and on the ground in the communities that we all call home. So again, that's just a quick kind of update on what we're doing, but very happy to be able to join you today and happy to stick around and answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Totally resonate with what you said about this being a moment for this sort of whole government, whole of sector, approach to digital equity, right? We have so many different groups of folks represented here that can offer thoughts and ideas about how they can support. I'm really looking forward to breakout discussions later this afternoon. So moving on to you, Knowledge Build. What opportunities does equitable access to broadband and digital tools unlock for our learners? I know I have had multiple conversations about this very topic. What's NTIA doing to open doors to these kinds of digital opportunities?
First off, I want to say thank you for this great opportunity. It's always good to be a part of conversation and be a part of the solution. And I want to take a step back. So we know that COVID heightened some of these issues, right? Help us identify the need for broadband access for learners. Of course, we knew about it, but it exacerbated the issues. So looking at the issues that came from COVID, we knew that children weren't able to go to school because they didn't have access to devices, broadband, or digital skills to use the devices. Not only did students and their families have to scramble to adopt to learn these skills, there's always notifications when they could, but what we realized is that there was an issue for helping them achieve success, and that many schools as well as children fell short in this process. So on the other side of things, we've seen how learners thrive when they can access to necessary resources. So the key to your question is the equity piece, right? The question is, how do we ensure that everyone can benefit from broadband access and digital skills? So that's where we come in. NTIA, we've been playing a large role at the digital equity side of things. There's $2.75 billion within the Digital Equity Act to program digital equity funding. To the Digital Equity Fund would be to ensure that all 50 states, territories, and tribes, specifically the 8 covered populations, have access to devices, the digital skills, and become a full participant of the digital economy. And those 8 groups, as I'm speaking of, are, if you don't know them, as low-income households, the racial and ethnic minorities, people living in rural communities, aging communities, the folks who are incarcerated, which also includes the people who are not formally incarcerated, the veterans. That's just a few of them, right? So you'll recognize that we didn't mention learners in there, but learners are something that you'll see a part of all those groups. And it's something that we're keenly focused on. So not just learners, but the students being able to ensure that they are able to address digital equity at each stage of the program. So that when states develop their plans, they're able to overcome using the bulk of the money for the capacity grant next year. So this year they're doing planning, next year they're doing capacity grants. So during the implementation is when you'll really see it reach down to the bottom of our learners, right? In addition to the capacity and competitive grant funding, we have $42.5 billion, which is under our BEAD programming. And that funds will be for infrastructure deployment and specifically consider unserved and underserved populations. But once their funds are completed, that's when the funds will be back deployed to digital equity funds, right? So to sum it up, we have the funds to give to states. The goal is to encourage states to include learners in their conversation so that they can see where the holes exist, so they can implement the dollars to fill the holes. Hopefully I didn't say too much. And hopefully if you have any questions, you can ask me later.
It's great. No, and I'm glad that both Ed, OET, and NTIA have been aligned on this message that learners are indeed part of every covered population that state digital equity plans are supposed to address. So it's really great to see states working to ensure that the needs of learners by incorporating the needs of the education sector into their digital equity plans, and just hearing from principals, hearing from district superintendents as part of this effort. So next, Tara, I used to be an AmeriCorps member with City Year, so this question is actually really near and dear to my heart. How do organizations supported by AmeriCorps, help learners and families connect to those technology-enabled opportunities to fully participate in a digital economy and society?
Thanks for having me. And I'm glad we have a group of panelists from different agencies, because we really think that a whole of government approach is needed to achieve universal connectivity and to ensure that everyone is ready to participate in a digital economy and society. And I think, cost, affordability, infrastructure are real immediate concerns that we saw exacerbated in the pandemic. But we also think a lot about human capital, right? And how critical human capital is to improving accessibility and adoption, as well as literacy, right? Digital literacy around how to use these tools in meaningful ways. And that's the role AmeriCorps plays. So every year we enroll more than 200,000 people as AmeriCorps members or AmeriCorps seniors volunteers, and they serve at 36,000 locations in every state and territory. And so, tracking broadband access, making sure every state has a plan are really critical. We are focused on providing evidence-informed, people-powered support, right? In some ways, the boots on the ground. And so that includes more than 35,000 members that are in almost 10,000 schools across the country. They serve in a broad range of roles, many that Kate highlighted at the top of this conversation that are supported by the NPSS. But I wanted to highlight a couple of examples, I think, just to help people visualize the diversity of the types of roles that AmeriCorps members have and where there are real places to work with your state, build into your state's digital equity plan, how you might utilize AmeriCorps to help implement some of these things. So I saw some city year mentions. I know we have some city year folks. I was actually in San Antonio a few weeks ago with city year members who were serving at a high school. Their service began as the COVID-19 pandemic hit schools. And so they transitioned really quickly from sitting next to students in a classroom, providing tutoring, mentoring, hands-on support, to making sure students had access to the digital tools they needed for synchronous or asynchronous learning opportunities, right? So they learned, then they went and helped families and students learn. They made sure teachers were tapped in and connected with students. When they needed to, they would go make physical deliveries of things in safe ways, right? So they really quickly were able to pivot. But we have hundreds of programs that are working to provide digital literacy and skills-based training. I know you're hearing from a couple examples later, but for example, Communities and Schools in Philadelphia has a great digital fellows program. So they're working with recent graduates from the city of Philadelphia, so particularly youth ages 18 to 24. Those folks are coming back in the schools to serve as fellows. So they're providing direct hands-on support to students around computer science, digital literacy training, connectivity, but they are also during their service in a pre-apprenticeship program. So they are getting IT certifications and different tools that they need to then take that experience out into the world post-service. So we have folks providing that level of direct hands-on supports in schools. And then the last thing I would mention is in 2021, Lead for America launched the American Connection Corps, which is a national AmeriCorps program that's focused on advancing rural economic prosperity through collaborative efforts. And so the American Connection Corps works with the American Connection Project, which frankly was a coalition of over 175 companies and organizations across industry that were collectively advocating for innovative policies around enabling high-speed internet. So over the last couple of years, they've had more than 50 AmeriCorps members across 16 states who are providing direct capacity building to advance broadband and digital inclusion. And so there is this real connection here, I think, with the work the FCC and the NTIA are doing of AmeriCorps members being able to provide that capacity building support, helping to apply for grants, distribute information in communities, find industry partners that can help in different parts of this pipeline. So I think, my big takeaway is we have to think about the infrastructure pieces, but we have to think about the human capital alongside it, both to get systems in place and frankly, then to provide the ongoing literacy training we know people need.
Thank you so much for those insights. And yeah, double tapping on your point about, providing those people-powered supports in parallel to building out the infrastructure, right? I'm recalling my time as a city or AmeriCorps member and helping, one of the initiatives that I had led with my students was to help them build, digital skills using different learning tools and things like that. And basically, serving as a digital navigator for their families, even though I had no idea what that term was until I learned about it a couple of years ago through NDIA. So yeah, definitely agree that the human capital piece is so important, and the piece that the NPSS sort of network can help sort of support and reinforce as well. So I have one closing question for all three of our panelists, and anyone can hop in at any order. We have a diverse group of sectors represented on this call. I'm just looking at the participant list. There's folks from the nonprofit sector, from different education organizations, some from the private sector. What's your sort of call to action for this community? What kinds of supports could be provided by these champion organizations to advance digital equity?
Okay, I can jump in. First off, it's a really courageous step, and it takes us all, like you guys were speaking about whole of government, but it requires all of us to participate in this process moving forward. From an NTIA standpoint, we're encouraging folks to reach out to their state broadband offices in their states. And I'll put a link in the chat, which is the Internet for All site. There's a map on the website in which you can identify who the state broadband offices are and who's doing work in your state. So that's one way to collaborate. And also on a local level, if you can identify folks that are doing work to participate in those activities. Thanks again.
I can jump in, and then Alejandro maybe. I think really echoing what Knowledgeable just said, I think we all have a role to play in this. And so it's really about reflecting as an organization on what skills, what kind of people power you have and where you might fit into this pipeline. And so that could be in terms of you're connected to communities that need access to information. So how can you think about distributing that information? It could be you're providing direct services, and actually you should be thinking about building some training and support in for your members or your volunteers or your staff, so that then they're able to transpose those skills to someone else. So I think that's the one, I know we have a diverse set of organizations, but I do think this is something where everyone has something to do, but it's really about reflecting where is your skills and opportunity, and that you as an individual organization don't need to be doing all of this, right? Like you can't be fixing all of the challenges or taking advantage of every opportunity, but there's somewhere you fit in based on who you're serving and the way that your program operates. And so just thinking deeply about that and then figuring out what's one step you can start with instead of trying to tackle the whole thing.
Alejandro, any closing thoughts from you?
Sure. And, I would say local collaboration is paramount. I think the more that you all can kind of leverage the resources that you're all either already have or building out or developing, I think is essential. I think every, community serving organization, if you don't already have a digital empowerment strategy, I think that you should, whether you're tackling, ensuring that people have affordable access to the Affordable Connectivity Program, leaning into digital skills, helping people, hosting kind of navigator services so you can help people apply or kind of learn new skills. All of that are important. And I don't think that any one organization should be overwhelmed by kind of tackling all of it. But I think that there is great resources at the community level that I think let's all be friends. We're here to help and support however we can. So if you need tools, resources, questions, the FCC is always there to not just help from DC, but happy to be on the ground with you guys to help ensure that we are getting these helpful tools out to every community that needs them.
Awesome. Well, thank you all to all of our panelists, for your time. That's all the questions that I had prepared for you all. And, for the attendees, I hope, their message really helped set the stage for the rest of our time together this afternoon, priming us for the spotlight session that's going to follow this and for the breakout discussions that you'll all participate in the second hour. So panelists, you're more than welcome to join us for the rest of the agenda, but I know you all have really busy schedules. If not, I hope you will be able to, collaborate together again soon. Thank you all for your time.
Good afternoon or good morning to our West Coast friends. My name is Jessica Chung. I'm a fellow at the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Educational Technology, so I'm one of Jisoo's colleagues. With this next part of our event, we want to highlight a couple of organizations that we hope can inspire and model how we might leverage NPSS type roles. So as Kate mentioned earlier, those tutors, mentors, wraparound service providers, student success coaches, post-secondary transition coaches, how we might leverage those roles to advance digital inclusion. And for these organizations, they've done an incredible job of leveraging direct service providers themselves to provide some of that information and technical support and digital skill building opportunities to communities. So we hope that these spotlights will offer some insight into why focusing on digital equity is important for the populations they serve, the opportunities and challenges they have faced in their work, and what has driven their success. So we hope that we're able to, through these lightning talks were able to provide some promising practices and models before you all head into breakout groups during the second half of the workshop. So we're really, really grateful to have Chrissy Powell of Bite Back and Tammy Hans-Lair of Communities and Schools Nevada here to share their work and perspectives with us. And I have the honor of introducing them. I'm going to read their abridged biographies as I want to conserve our time to hear from them. Our first speaker will be Chrissy Powell, who serves as the Chief Growth and Impact Officer at Bite Back. Chrissy is a community-driven advocate for social justice. As a Maryland native, Chrissy is a proud HBCU graduate of Morgan State University. As a leader in the sector, Chrissy has dedicated the last decade to the nonprofit community. In 2019, she launched the Baltimore site for Bite Back, a 25-year-old Washington, D.C. based nonprofit that provides under-resourced communities with an equitable pathway into the digital economy. Chrissy also co-founded the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition in 2020, and that includes over 80 members from various sectors, all coming together to drive solutions to close the digital divide in the city. The coalition has also become a national model for other coalitions in other cities, and Chrissy works to duplicate such efforts nationwide, including the newly formed DC Digital Equity Coalition. She also serves on the Board of Directors and Governance Committee for WYPR, an affiliate of National Public Radio, as well as Love Back, a newly formed nonprofit focused on youth with aspirations in the music industry. Now serving as Chief Growth and Impact Officer of Bite Back, Chrissy leads the organization's national and international expansion efforts into various communities, also impacted by the digital divide. So most recently, she successfully scaled Bite Back into Sacramento, Miami, and the organization plans to launch programs in Kentucky, Arizona, and Missouri later this year. Very exciting. After Chrissy, Tammy Hans-Lair will speak. Tammy is the CEO of Communities and Schools Nevada. And as the CEO and state director, Tammy uses her experience, her network, strategic vision, and solution-oriented approach in her daily leadership across the state. Communities and Schools of Nevada is the 5th largest state office of the nation's leading dropout prevention organization, committing to doing whatever it takes to help students stay in school and graduate career and college ready, and currently serves more than 75,000 high poverty students in 92 schools nationwide, achieving a high school graduation rate of 94% in the 2021-2022 school year. As a Nevada resident for over 35 years, she brings nearly 30 years of leadership, problem solving, relationship building, and communication skills to the position of CEO and state director. Tammy believes in the endless possibilities one can achieve through determination, positivity, and catapulting over one goal to race to the next, all done with the belief that doing whatever it takes doesn't mean sacrifice, rather exhibits the strength and smarts to master any challenge. And so with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to our first speaker, Chrissy. Thank you both so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that awesome intro. I am going to share my screen if that's okay. I should have permission, hopefully. Let's see here. Can you all see my screen all right? Thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro. You already heard it. We've been, in the digital equity space for going on 26 years actually this year. And I need not repeat our mission, but we are really focused on closing the digital divide through digital advocacy, digital literacy skills training, as well as tech certification training for under-resourced community members. A bit about our program. So many people who look at Bite Back and know Bite Back know us as a workforce development organization. And while we are a workforce development organization where we have career pathways, we're working with community members with low to no digital skills, as well as community members who are interested in career pathways, alternative pathways into the world of tech, into tech careers. We offer no cost training, both in A+, CompTIA A+, Net Plus, Security Plus, certification and career readiness supports, as well as our admin track where we do MOS, Microsoft Office Specialist certifications, career readiness, and job supports, job placement supports as well for opportunity youth 18 to 24, as well as adults over 24 of all ages. So career readiness and career pathways, having those supports, and we mentioned I think we mentioned, those wraparound supports. Case management is a huge part of what we do as far as assisting our community members with barriers that come up in life prior to them going into our career pathways. We find that, stipends, I want to mention, I'm going to try to move quickly through this. I know this is a lightning round, but I just want to throw in with our career pathways in particular, and our opportunity youth age individuals, we find that stipends is, I'm sure you all, I'm preaching to the choir, stipends is the way to go. It truly increased our completion rates of our certification programs from 75% completion to a 94% completion. So I just want to highlight the value of stipends as a motivation and as a support to help them with transportation and other items that might support their process. In addition to our tech certification, we of course do digital literacy skills training for our community members who have low to no digital skills, which starts with powering on a computer, how to use a mouse, setting up an email address, safely navigating the virtual world, online banking, telehealth, and registering for resources and things like ACP benefits. I want to highlight today, however, our 360 fellows. So everyone is familiar with digital navigators. NDIA did a great job of really coining this term and really popularizing this term. Our Bite Back 360 navigators is our community to community approach of addressing the digital divide, particularly for our older adults who are often left out of the conversation. And we know that their means of accessing the digital world during COVID, I think shed a huge spotlight on the digital divide and gap in skills, particularly with our older adults. So we developed the 360 Fellows Digital Navigators program about a year and a half ago. And this is our intergenerational program, which is really a purposeful exchange. It's tech training for our youth, and as well as it's supporting our older adults at the same time. So I'll go into that in a bit. The age range of our 360 fellows, our youth is focused from 9th grade to college sophomores. And we're really informing this initiative again, by equipping our youth to support our older adults and or senior citizens with the digital skills supports and online resources that they need to be supported and to thrive in everyday life. So again, our intergenerational training is really focused on community engagement and community supporting community. Why older adults? If you all did not know, of course, 41% of older adults do not use the internet at all, and 75% say that they require help when utilizing technology. So we know that they are a vulnerable population that requires typically in-person one-on-one supports. Historically, of course, older adults have had to navigate these things on their own. And again, COVID really shed a spotlight on that we cannot allow our older adults to be alone when navigating the digital world, that they need to feel supported. So what we did in this program is we wanted to bring our young people and train them to become digital navigators, and providing them internship opportunities, as well, paid internship opportunities to train and to support our older adults in the communities. So our 360 Fellows program is done typically in person. We have done it virtually in partnership with organizations such as Urban Alliance, but we really focus on not just training them as digital navigators and providing them the tools and the resources to support older adults, but talking about career exploration, going into professional development, how to communicate best with older adults, and really hands-on experience. And we, of course, ensure that we will very much big on impacts. So impact. With this particular program, we identify our potential youth to become digital navigators, again, with partnerships with organizations who may focus specifically on young adults or individuals who come directly through our program from referrals. And working with nonprofits, of course, summer youth employment programs, and with local government and senior centers, senior living facilities, and community centers to identify the sites of which our digital navigators can go on site once they're trained and support our older adults. We're working with out of school time individuals, young people, and again, the training is during the school year. It's something that we do typically at their after school program. We do the digital navigator training, and then they go right into their summer internship, paid internship, and they're assigned to a community center or a senior center for the summer. So it is very much something that we're excited. The intergenerational approach we find really creates a bond that is often a huge gap between older adults and say their grandchildren, great grandchildren. And this really brings not only supports with digital tasks such as, ACP benefits, getting that application done, accessing Social Security benefits, telehealth appointments, online banking, online shopping, ensuring that the young adult is equipped to support with all of these aspects and deliver these digital literacy supports and digital task supports to our older adults. Of course, through the training and their volunteer experience, they'll develop important workforce readiness proficiency. So we're talking about problem solving, organizational and leadership skills, effective communication, and professional work ethics for our young adults. So this is really prepping them for graduation, prepping them for possible career exploration in IT, in the tech world. And of course, it's our turnkey curriculum. Again, we're utilizing surveys to measure impact so that we can report on our impact to ensure our older adults feel supported and to ensure that our youth feel like that their skills, they're receiving upskills and skills that are necessary to help them navigate into the professional world, into the workforce post high school. Of course, the training outline for our digital navigators, we are focused on adult learning sciences. So the first aspect that we're teaching our youth is how to effectively work with someone new to the digital world, specifically to assist older adults and our senior community members. We focus on adult education, learning theory, effective communication with older adults, and evidence-based practices, and of course, focusing on navigation and valuable resources like ACP around work health and education. And then we go into really simulating digital literacy skills training. So we're not only equipping them with the adult learning theory, but we're equipping them with digital literacy skills that often come up with our older adult community. So we're teaching them and ensuring that they can teach the basics of computer safety, emailing and managing files, navigating online services, resources. I mentioned telehealth. And then the last component to this training with our young people, our fellows, is introducing them to those vital skills necessary to enter the workforce. As I mentioned earlier, career readiness, career exploration, and pathways into tech careers. We have launched this program in several cities. It's been very exciting. And we've had the support of great corporate donors, as well as FCC ACP grant that we got recently, that we plan to expand our digital navigator, a 360 digital navigator and fellows as well. But we know again that in-person one-on-one supports and tracking to ensure that those that are supported feel supported, not that we're just telling them this is what we're here to support, but ensuring that we're getting feedback from our older adults and those who are supported is very important to us in this model. So I will end my part. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. Every time I've heard you talk about Bite Back and the work that you all do, I feel really, really inspired. So thank you for sharing your story with us again. Tammy, would love to hear about the work you're doing at community and schools.
Wonderful, thank you, Chrissy. I could have used you, quite frankly, 2.5 years ago. So I'm going to talk a little bit about something that was definitely a lot more grassroots, and I'm going to take us back really to the center of the pandemic. As we know, we all were navigating a virtual world and trying to figure out what was going to happen. And in Nevada, we have 17 school districts. And when the largest school district, Clark County School District, was going to go virtual, we had not heard from hundreds of thousands of students and families to know if they had access to internet and access to computers. And for those of you, I'm sure most of you are familiar with communities and schools. I know that somebody mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the job of communities and schools is to really eliminate whatever barrier it is that keeps our kids from coming to school. So immediately, the governor's task force contacted communities and schools and said, listen, we've got 100,000 kids we can't find. We don't know if they have access to internet. We need you to help launch a virtual call center. What I immediately explained to say, well, this is great, but I've never launched a virtual call center, so I don't really know how to do that. So I don't know, we're happy to help, but I'm not necessarily sure that we're the right team. But lo and behold, as we all do with everybody's work, specifically also at communities and schools, is we just jump in and we solve barriers. So that's what I'm going to share a little bit about today is the work that we did, which, as I mentioned, was very, very grassroots. And we did it with a very, very ended up being a very cohesive partnership with over 100 different organizations here in Nevada, and was proud to be able to connect all of our families to internet. So here's how it started. We had about 120,000 Nevada students that were missing. They had sent out a survey that said, hi, send us back a note if you need a computer or if you need access to internet. And we had 120,000 families that we did not know what had happened to them, if they had internet, if they didn't have internet, what was going on in their world. So quickly we launched communities and schools in partnership with the governor's task force and Nevada Department of Education. We launched a virtual call center that we've had about 2 weeks to set up. Again, didn't really know exactly what we were doing, but we kind of figured it out. And we partnered with multiple organizations and had really what this grassroots efforts was. As I was navigating the virtual call center, which I'll talk a little bit about, we had other organizations that were taking the flyers that were on the previous slide, and they were passing them out to the zip codes that we knew that we hadn't heard from. So we were passing them out in front of grocery stores. We were passing them out in different neighborhoods. We were passing them out. We went door to door, like, we haven't heard from you. Please call this number. We need to know if you're connected to the internet. We also worked with about 100 different nonprofits so that they could reach out to their clients. Are you connected to the internet? What do you need? How can we help you? So it really was this kind of all hands on deck organizational stretch that jumped in about 2 weeks to make sure this happened. The work that communities and schools did is we led the effort. We trained 150 virtual call center agents that were not normally virtual call center agents. Many of them worked in Clark County School District transportation. They worked in offices. They were teachers' aides. They were staff people that were not essential in the particular virtual world because maybe they had in-person jobs. So they ultimately all became virtual call center agents that communities and schools trained. We wrote a script. We trained them. We operated 12 hours a day for 4 shifts a day, 6 days a week. And in addition to our Clark County School District friends, we had some of our communities and schools friends. We had nonprofit partners. We had volunteers, all that had to be trained, background checked if they already hadn't been done so, in order to make sure that we could put them on the phone with families and ultimately connect them to the internet. The good news is that our school district already had the T-Mobile hotspots and the deal with Cox Communications that they would connect them to internet. And we already had the computers, so we already had the Chromebooks, but there wasn't a mechanism in order to reach the families and make sure that they had the access. So that's what we created, was the Family Support Center. So basically you would call the 1-888 number and we would ask you a series of questions. And if you qualified for the free internet, which was a fairly easy qualification piece, we then set you up and either connected you to Cox Communications, which was a modem and an internet source that we sent directly to your home from Cox Communications. Or if you were a family that maybe was experiencing some housing insecurity, if your home was an older home, if you lived in a weekly unit, we then set you up with a T-Mobile hotspot. The challenge is that we didn't really have a chance to kind of work through like all the what ifs, and what if a child is going back and forth between mom and dad? Do you give both parents internet? Like there was a lot of like internet or a lot of challenges that we came up with because we didn't have time to actually work through every scenario and have an answer. So it really was like building the boat, sailing the boat, and repairing the boat all at the same time. So there was a lot of like back and forth that came out of that. So what had to happen is we ended up having to do a lot of follow-up because we didn't want any family to be left behind. So ended up separating out some of the call center agents to actually be the ones that were then following up and calling the families, maybe the families that we didn't have an answer with in the beginning. Maybe we had changed our practices and our policies a little bit because we had to go back and ask the school district for their permission since they were paying for the Cox Communications and the T-Mobile. So there was a lot of like kind of hands-on, like, okay, we're going to navigate this in this particular way. And then there was also like an entire follow-up mechanism. We also partnered with all the municipalities. So Clark County, City of North Las Vegas, City of Las Vegas, partnered with them. And I'll talk a little bit about how we kind of set up our own like little digital navigator operation going door to door as well. But I think one of the other most successful pieces of the Family Support Center is we started, I actually have a hospitality background. As you can imagine, we have a tremendous amount of hospitality professionals here in Las Vegas. And we set it up as a concierge mentality. So what we were finding as our families were calling us is that in addition to setting them up with internet and a Chromebook that they could go pick up at their school, there was also, especially here in Nevada, a lot of families that needed to apply for SNAP benefits for the first time. Because again, if you don't remember, the casinos closed here. So we had tens of thousands of people that were trying to qualify for things for the very first time that had never really done this work. So we set this up as a concierge mentality so that all of our 150 call center agents had the tools to be able to help sign people up for SNAP and show them how to do that, how to apply for a housing stipend because maybe they were going to be losing their house, all the different options that we know that a lot of our families need and sometimes don't know how to navigate because it's a difficult web in order to navigate many of the things that Chrissy mentioned. We were training our call center agents on how to do that and making sure that that if they didn't know how to follow up with a family, that we took their information down and then we had a social worker call and follow up with them. So that was the other thing we did. If our call center agents didn't know how to do that, we made sure that they were able to do that and referred them to a social worker who then called and followed up. And our social workers came from Clark County School District. They came from Communities and Schools. They came from Boys Town. They came from everybody. Again, another just really example of all nonprofits working together to make sure that we were eliminating those barriers and doing whatever it took to make sure that we could navigate connecting families to the needs over and above the internet and the computer. There's another slide. So this was actually, when we talk about data, this actually was sent out to our entire call center and all of our partners every single day. So every day we tracked how many students that we had reached and where our goal was, how many students we had connected to the internet, and how many students we had connected to devices. So we sent this out every single day. We tracked our data every single day. And on the back end, we actually were robocalling families that we hadn't heard from. So if we still hadn't heard from you, we were robocalling you every single day. Like, we still haven't heard from you, please call the Family Support Center. We still haven't heard from you, please call the Family Support Center. We were about as annoying as you could possibly be in a very gentle and nice way, because we wanted to make sure that we had connected every single family to either a reliable internet source or and or a Chromebook or a computer, depending on what the device was that the school district had. So data played a really large role in our work that we did, so that we always had like an end game in terms of what we were doing. The next part of the work, again, I didn't know the word digital navigator either, but what I did know is I still had tens of thousands of families that hadn't called the Family Support Center, hadn't filled out their survey online, and when we checked in with their schools, they weren't consistently logging into school. So we knew that there was going to be an issue there. So what we did is we then created a field agent, what I called a field agent program. And we worked with communities and schools, team members, and then each of the municipalities either gave us some of their team members, or for example, the city of North Las Vegas actually hired me 6 part-time team members that we trained to go out and meet people where they were at their homes. So we started knocking on doors. We started knocking on doors and in a really nice, polite way, saying, hi, we're from the Family Support Center. We still haven't heard from you. You have 3 students, you know, at the Clark County School District. We wanted to see, do you have a reliable internet source? And we had the hotspots with us, because at this point, we're now 2 months into school. We didn't have time to then go through the entire process and sign them up. So we kind of edited our script in such a way that they could literally like go through 3 or 4 questions, qualify them. We knew they were pretty qualified because we already knew what zip codes, we knew what schools they were going to. So we knew some of the things that were already made an assumption, and we could hand them a hotspot right there and also hand them a Chromebook right there if they needed their computers. And we could all do that from the devices that our field agents had. So again, it was meeting our families where they were to make sure that they had the tools that they needed to succeed. And then also our field agents could do exactly some of the things that Chrissy was saying, like show them how to log into that Chromebook, because again, that's the barrier. You can give them you can give technology and the devices and the actual pieces, but unless we're teaching our families how to use them, that's not getting them across the finish line. So our field agents were trained to be able to do that as well. Obviously it was during COVID, so we had to utilize our protocols, but we did a pretty good job of making sure that we could navigate with our families, having them step outside and really work with them to make sure that they knew how to use the hotspot and knew how to use the Chromebook. That going door to door was the only way that we were going to get to 100%. You know, again, there was a lot of barriers in terms of families who just didn't normally want the internet. It wasn't something that they were used to, wasn't something that they were comfortable with. So we really made sure that we were meeting our families where they were. So the success was that we started the program in the middle of June, and on December, I believe the date was 16th, we actually said that we were able to connect all of our families and all of our students to a reliable internet source and a device. And there's no way that we could have done that without bringing all of our municipalities together, all of our nonprofit partners together, all of our school districts together, and even some of our private funders together. That really was a key piece of the puzzle in terms of making sure that we all had a stake in the work and making sure that we could be successful. And the work then continued throughout the school year, and we did keep the Family Support Center line open as communities and schools. So we continued working the rest of the school year and overseeing the Family Support Center. We then did turn it over to Clark County School District, who still operates it to this day, and is still you know, connecting families to internet through some of their ESSER dollars and through some of their and some of the devices, because they are a device one-to-one district. So that is still open and is still moving on today. And I think that's really the end. I mean, again, just as I mentioned, communities and schools is community doing whatever it takes to make sure our students are successful. And it was a proud moment for us to be part of this work. And we're looking forward to continuing our work within the digital equity landscape. Thank you.
So thank you both so much. I think Bite Back and Connecting Kids are such powerful examples of how education is a trusted source of information for families and a source of people power that can help advance digital equity. Thank you both to both of our speakers, Chrissy and Tammy. I think you provided a lot of food for thought and inspiration as we head into our breakout sessions and think about how NPSS can continue to advance digital equity. Thank you both so much.